And so we wrote the draft, and we sort of mixed it a bit, and then we submitted it, and we got a unanimous consent for this motion to declare Montreal a city of excellence in heavy metal. And the press went wild too, and the international press. And I saw my name being mentioned in Japanese and Brazilian Portuguese and in Finnish and all over the world. I was getting Google hits all of a sudden. It wasn't for that though, but it was amazing to see that we've been able to vibrate this idea that Montreal is a city of excellence in heavy metal across the world. So it was one of my funnest moments ever as a politician.
Hey, what's up, Vox and Hops heads? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope you are ready because Brutal North America launches next week. Brutal North America is presented by Indie Merch Store, is fueled by Heartbeat Hot Sauce Company, and is supported by Yakima Chief Hops, and I am so damn excited that it is finally here. From June 21st to the 25th, there are 22 unique band collabs which are dropping. They have all been created by metal breweries from across the United States and Canada. I have curated this list. I have curated these collabs. I have helped create these unique brew experiences that you can go pick up. I am just so damn excited about this. Just to name a few of the amazing collabs which are dropping next week. Here in Canada, we got Cannery Brewing with Unleash the Archers, La Paticaire and Augury, Third Moon Brewing and Brand of Sacrifice. As well as in the United States, we got Broken Goblet Brewing with Hath. There's Cosmic Eye Brewing with the RRBG podcast. We got Dry City Brewworks and Yakuza, Lasting Brass Brewing Company with Shadow of Intent, and Wake Brewing with the Atlas Moth. I'm just so damn excited that all of these people and so many more have teamed up to work together to spread the good word about life, metal, and craft beer. If you'd like to find some more information on Brutal North America, you could head on over to my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. And there is a whole bunch more information about Brutal North America there. I'm so damn excited that Brutal North America begins next week. Before we jump into today's episode, I would just like to ask you to follow the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I'm also asking you to rate it and write a review, because when you do that, more metalheads just like yourself will be able to discover the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. Now, why do I say this? I say this because when someone is looking for a new podcast to listen to, what do? They scroll down, they look at those reviews. If those reviews state that the podcast is amazing, is interesting, has killer content, then that person is probably going to give that podcast a chance. So if you were to write a review for the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, you could actually be the person that sways someone into becoming a future Vox and Hops head. And that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, in today's episode, I'm with Craig Sauvé, who is the man that got Montreal declared as a city of excellence in heavy metal a few years ago. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox and Hops episode number 274.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today, I'm with Craig Sauvé. He is a Montreal City Councillor for the area of St. Henry, Little Burgundy, Point St. Charles, and Griffintown. He is on the board of the STM, which is our public transport system here in Montreal, which absolutely rules. And I say that with pride because I don't have a car, and that's exactly what I use to get around, and I wouldn't do that if it wasn't so damn good. He's also an associate exec on the Associate Executive Committee for Projet Montréal. You're a busy dude, Craig. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me. This is fun.
This interview is a long time coming because we have a mutual friend that tried to get this to happen before the pandemic kicked off. Shout out to Christopher Curtis. I call him Tito. We went to high school together. I'm stoked that he pushed this in the right direction and introduced us. It was a long time ago.
True that. An excellent local Montreal journalist, too, that covers really important issues for everyone.
Absolutely. Let's start with a shitty question so that we can go to brighter, more fun territory. We were supposed to do this interview like right when the pandemic hit last year. So how did you cope with the glorious year that is now behind us of 2020?
Oh, well, what an awful year, right? I'm very lucky. I have a job, I have a home, I have a food, I have a girlfriend, I have my health, so I have no complaints. But as a city councilor, a politician, there's a lot of anxiety out there, a lot of really legitimate worries from the population. So it was a very rocky year. The world is turned on its head, and all the cities with all the services we offer got turned on their head too with this, with social distancing and with new rules and sanitation rules. So to turn on the water fountains in the park just so people can go drink some water, that was like weeks of negotiation with public health. So every last thing was very complicated, and there are people out there that are suffering for real. So it's been a rough year, and I'm an optimist. So I'm really hopeful that we're going to get past this as a society and as a world, and we can start building better things and going back to living like we can before.
Even better. We'll be even better, Craig. That's my goal. I always spread positivity, shoot positivity out into the world, and bring people together. That's what Vox and Hops is all about. And it's also about, drinking beer and having a chat. So Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their lives, talking about music, while sharing a craft beer. So what beer do you have on your side that we're going to share tonight, Craig?
Oh, well, I decided to go with, to represent the hood. This is from Les Sans-Taverne, which is a cooperative brewing a brewery in Le Bâtiment 7 in Pointe Saint Charles. And they just did a recent series about STM bus lines that pass through the point. So they did a Pilsner based on the 57 line, and this is the Stout based on the 71 line. And it's April 21st, and it's snowing outside for whatever, God knows what reason in Montreal. So I went with the Stout tonight to represent local point brewery, delicious stuff too, and represent the STM in one shot. So I think this is and they are great beers. I've had a few of them already. What are you drinking?
That you had to pick that beer with everything you're involved with. On my side, I'm drinking a brand new Vox and Hops collab that just dropped this week. This is Black IPA, clearly inspired by an album that I grew up listening to in my dad's car. This is by L'Ours Brun, killer brewery out of Repentigny. This is really cool. It's a Black IPA, 7.2%. It was so roasty and so malty that Bruno, their head brewer, was so disappointed that no matter how much hops he was putting in, it wasn't popping. The hops were not coming through. They weren't cutting through the roasted malts, that he added some pineapple puree to it. So
wow,
that's a bit wild and out there, but it's a killer brew. And I'm stoked. I'm going to pour this out, and we'll do a cheers, and then we'll talk about beer for a little bit.
Beer and metal, my two favorite subjects. That's why this is the podcast for me.
I love it. Killer foamy head. I love it. Cheers. I love it. And you can smell the pineapple from here. It's really interesting. Woo! The roasted malt's delicious. Cheers. It's awesome.
I have to try. I don't know L'Ours Brun. It's the first time, honestly, I heard about this brewery. So
they're doing really cool stuff. And when I saw this label, when he sent it to me, I was like, I can help you move that beer. I can stand behind that project. So that's why my name's right there. Let's talk about beer. Let's talk about your very first beer, Craig.
Oh my goodness, my very first beer. I was in a park in the West Island, where I'm from. I'm from the West Island of Montreal. I'm a suburb boy. And, I was probably a bit underage, like a lot of kids when they try their first beer. It's a Blue Dry, if I'm not mistaken, what we call a king can of Blue Dry. So it's like a double can back in the day. And I thought it was horrible tasting beer, but I enjoyed the little buzz I got off of it. But not too long after, I started with my friends really early on going to the SAQ and also buying beer underage at the SAQ. I had long hair, the metalhead that don't grow no more, but they still have beautiful long hair, wavy hair. And we used to go to the SAQ and buy for our friends. I used to try all the different beers from around the world, and I was so excited to try. I remember the first time I tried a Heineken, I thought it was like a whole other type of beer that we couldn't get in Quebec. I thought it tasted like, the marijuana. I said, what's that, the skunk taste? What is that? I love it. And my first ever Guinness to me was a revolution too. I was like, what is this? It's black. And I'm 15, you know, I'm learning about these things. And McEwen's Scotch Ale was one of my first ones. That was available at the SAQ back in the day, the local liquor commission in Quebec. And it was like sort of a very dark, like something like a 8%, very sweet, kind of like it has a molassesy kind of maple taste to it. And that was something we drank a lot of back in the day, McEwen's Scotch Ale.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And I do remember my first Heineken too, and being like, what the hell is this? Why is it so skunky? And a Beck's too. Around that era of Beck's had that same skunkiness to it. And it's because of those green bottles, right? So that's why the transition to cans that everyone's doing is better for the beer, because it keeps the light out. And that's exactly, it's the light that makes that skunkiness come out in the Heineken and the Beck's of, you know, when I was drinking them in the late 90s, early 2000 era for myself. I'm surprised sorry, go for it.
I was gonna say that, you know, that I know you did a whole month of alcohol-free beer and alcohol-free and sort of like other types of drinks, and Heineken makes a really good non-alcoholized beer. I always go for the craft, but it's a 0.0 and it's really low in calories, and it tastes a lot like the original Heineken. And I also did a dry February, so I was listening to you doing your dry February, and I did my dry February, and that was one of my go-to beers because I thought it did a really good reproduction of the original Heineken with no alcohol.
We're very, very lucky to be in a world where there are so many great options for non-alcoholic brews. I think I found Sober February to be extremely easy. If I was thirsty, I would still drink a beer, and it felt like a beer. And I'm excited to see where 2021 and 2022 going on, the non-alcoholic game is going to go, because I think it's just going to keep expanding and becoming more and more interesting.
Absolutely. And we're seeing in those sort of like small little beer stores and beer depanneurs that they have these sections almost, you know, where you'll have, 10 different types of companies that are making really good quality craft alcohol free beer. And it's good because, we need those cleansing times, and we need to be responsible with our drinking too.
I'm curious at the fact that you discovered more craft beer by going to an SAQ as opposed to going through the standard Quebec route, because I was completely expecting you to pull I went from, Blue Dry to Unibrew to, which is the classic Quebec beer story that I normally hear. So talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's true. Well, I did actually do that round too. We were really interested in different types of beers, and I don't know why I was so interested in trying these new types, but absolutely the Unibrew, and it's kind of metal too. The logo, the Maudit logo, Fains Monde, and what else? That I guess Raftman and Don de Dieu. Really good beers. I was a huge Unibrew fan as well, and because they were stronger in the alcohol content, it was kind of like a niche as well. So you'd be pretty badass if you're drinking like a 9% beer, and of course after 3 of them, and you're 16 years old, you go, but down. But yeah, those, and Boreal too is another company which I really appreciate, and still making really good quality stuff out from Blainville, I think, just north of Montreal. I still love a Boreal. Any day of the week, I think it stands up to any microbrew, quite honestly.
What would be the first true microbrew that really blew your mind? Outside of the SAQ and outside of the big boys here, like the smaller a smaller craft beer bar.
I think I remember, some of the first ever hard IPA like this. So those IPAs that are really heavy in the bitterness. I love it. I love it when it's really bitter. I like to make the sound after I'm drinking a beer, because it's really quenching something. So I remember trying my first, I think it was probably in the States, like a double dry hop sort of look. The first time it looked like that sort of cloudy, yellow, ultra bitter, but ultra refreshing beers. I couldn't name you one of them right now, honestly, but I remember seeing it like in the Boston area and stuff like that. And that blew my mind. And so that's now very dominant. It's very present in the beer industry. And there's an amazing brewery just across the canal from where I am, which is from Brassatorium. You probably know. Absolutely. Also Metalheads. And they make fantastic double dry hop and IPAs. And so them as another group that I love getting a couple of cans. It's hard to find. They don't sell in stores. You have to go to the brewery. but they have an awesome terrace in the back, and it's an industrial neighborhood. So like there's almost zero residences in the very small sector they're in. So it's just like these big, gorgeous, old brick industrial buildings, and they're really nice setup and these amazing, amazing beers. So that's another crew. We're really in a great area in the Montreal area for all the breweries that are coming out. That's unbelievable.
It's so exciting, and it just matched my passion so well. I was totally into it, and another one, and just my area. I live in Villeray, so just so many of them within walking distance. So there's no danger of getting too far from the house, and you can just make it back on your own, and it's amazing. And you can like pub crawl to a few of them, and it's totally doable and feasible within like a 10-minute walk. Dangerous on the way home, but fun nonetheless. Let's talk about metal. Let's talk about the soundtrack of your youth. Let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about what music was playing when. Hold on, I got this. Let's talk about the soundtrack of your youth. What music did your guardians or parents listen to when you were not in control of the music? What music did your parents and guardians listen
to? Michael Bolton, George Michael, Richard Marx, soft rock home.
That was my dad. Richard Marx. He loved Richard Marx.
Yeah, Richard Marx has got some moves, and he's a cool guy to listen to when he's on podcasting these days and doing interviews.
Really?
Got some interesting views. Yeah, it's a pretty progressive guy. Very anti-Trump. So there wasn't, my mother was classical music too, but there wasn't a lot of hard rock in my home. I got it from other kids at school. I see them wearing their, mean-looking Metallica or Megadeth T-shirts or Suicidal Tendencies T-shirt, and I go, it was just something that there was an allure there with the aesthetics of it all. And when I heard, I think the first metal song I can remember hearing that blew my mind was Symphony of Destruction by Megadeth. Da, da, da. I was like, it's pretty basic, right? But it's really solid. Like it really, again, I'm 13 or 12 when this thing comes out, and I said, wow, that's really awesome music. But my first favorite band was Queen, and it's still probably my favorite band in the whole world. I think Queen is just beyond the scope of so much of what's been done, and they got some pretty heavy stuff too. And so there was some convergence there, and some Queen and some Megadeth at the same time, and some Metallica.
I love that. Do you remember the first live show that you went to go see?
I saw Rush at the Montreal Forum.
Wow.
That was pretty wicked. That was a Counterparts tour. So songs like "Stick It Out," I think was the main single from that, which is a pretty rockin' tune actually. And my friend had tickets via his parents, and we were like 12 or 13 or so. So escort with his mom to the Montreal Forum.
Okay, but she came to the show with you guys.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It was super parents. Fun. Oh yeah, and now seeing Neil Peart live. God rest his soul, one of the fine drummers of all rock and roll and metal history. And doing his solos, he blew me away. It blew me away. They're such a great band to see live. I think I saw them 3 times in total live, and every time was 10 on 10.
Do you remember the last show that you saw before the pandemic hit?
The before times. What was the last show I saw? I went to see an electronic artist from Norway. He played, I forget the name of the club, called Com Trues. I don't know if you know Com Trues.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
I went with my buddy Niall, and we went to go see Com Trues, and the club was closing at 3, and he only got on stage at 1:30.
Wow.
Me and my friend and I were there, 10, and we were having a nice conversation in the club. And when Com Trues hit, half of the people had gone because it was kind of late, and the metro closes at 12:30. So, but the room just rocked. Everybody was there, like hit the floor, and it's sort of like 80s style chill wave, but he does it the best. I think Com Trues was one of the great innovators of the chill wave sound. So yeah, I think it was the last show I saw.
You were a musician as well.
Yeah.
Talk to me about your first time on stage.
First time on stage with Necrotic Mutations. Was the opening band. I was not in Necrotic Mutations. And then Hidden Pride also played. If you recall, Hidden Pride is a great death metal band from Montreal, technical death metal, a la Suffocation. And we were the opening band, and we were, 14, 15 years old. We were called Carpathian. And it was in the style of like Mortician, but not as well executed, but like really low end, like not going past the 5th fret, like bottom string the whole time. The vocalist was really good, and he had a really good low growl for a teenager. And it was fun. It was at the Cat House, which is a venue that doesn't exist anymore on a Mayor Street. And I wouldn't have normally not been able to allowed to access this bar because there's not a lot of all ages shows there, if any. And it was a really good experience. I don't think we were amazing, but the positive vibes from the other metalheads in the room, seeing these kids from the West Island taking a shot, going on stage, giving everything they got with the early chops they were developing was amazing. I felt appreciated, and I felt like supported, and it encouraged me. Even though when Hidden Pride came on after us, it was night and day. They were awesome. They killed it. They really delivered. But I felt like we could get there, and I felt that the community was there to support us, and people would come see us and say, "Good job, guys! Good job!" There was a lot of that positive, reinforcement, and that's what metal is all about too. That's like looking after your fellow metalhead and encouraging them to take part in the scene. And so that was a great experience.
It's all about the family. It's all about because we've all been there. We've all been that opening band. You have to be an opening band at some point. I guess some people haven't done that and they've just gone straight to the top, but a lot of us start at the bottom and claw our way up. Being from the West Island, I know that the early version of Cryptopsy came from the West Island, and I feel like that was something that was known. So were you a fan of the early version of Cryptopsy? Did you know them back then? Did you know them in that era? Did you know that they were from the West Island?
I think I recall maybe one party where there were members of Cryptopsy there. I was pretty young though, so they were, metalheads of that age with that esteem. You looked at them and you're, with awe. So I never really interacted with members of Cryptopsy from back then, but there were some mentors and metalheads that were a little bit older, 17, 18 around too. And Blasphemy Made Flesh is such a good album. Like, this album was an album that we played on cassette in cars, in our Walkmans. The opening track, Defenestration, boom, boom, bow, boom, 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 bow, and then It's So Hard. Never forget that opener, one of the best openers of all time. And I and when it came on CD, I'm like, wow, this can even sound better, because the cassette was already pretty rough and the recording's a bit rough. But I love the early version of Cryptopsy for sure. God bless you all, you guys. You do amazing stuff for metal.
Well, thank you. Let's talk about metal and Montreal. Now, in 2019, you did something very cool for the city of Montreal, and this is all you're doing, your brainchild. I remember when it happened, and you walked in there with a Nunso vinyl. It was an album or a CD or a vinyl, yep. And I remember everyone was sending us pictures of this. So
oh, no kidding, amazing.
I think it's so. Montreal is now a city of excellence in metal music, world renowned. This press went worldwide. I think it's amazing. How did you get this to happen? Why did you get this to happen? What is the whole story behind this?
There are a lot of opportunities as a politician to sort of give a shout out, and there's in the Montreal scene, it could have been like one post on Facebook or something, but I really wanted some sort of institutional recognition of this amazing scene we have in Montreal. It is, Quebec in general, I think, is amazing. And Montreal is a bit of an epicenter and all that. There's so much action. It's the metropolis of the province. So a lot of it comes to Montreal. And we've put out such good quality bands, that have, gotten world renown, who have in turn influenced other bands across the world. And I wanted to get that in. So I wanted to really just make people take notice in Montreal and recognize what an amazing scene we had here. So I proposed it to the mayor and some of my colleagues at City Hall, and they're like, "Are you nuts? What do you Because sometimes we celebrate the traditional things or certain communities." I said, "This is awesome. Metalheads work so damn hard on their craft. They do it almost vast majority for free. So many people are just passing out flyers, organizing, doing podcasts." Playing bands, supporting it, and most bands when they start, they don't really expect to make a dime. I hope that everybody could, so we could have more metal that be self-sufficient, and we can make sure that artists are well paid. But people just give and give and give and give, and you never hear it on the radio. It never gets respect on the award shows. Never gets respect in the mainstream. So I thought it would be something that would really sort of say thank you to the Montreal metalheads, and make our civil servants at the city of Montreal also take notice. I want our civil servants to, when they do cultural programs, or if we think about sort of investments or support, I want them to remember, hey, we have a metal scene here that's one of the most kick-ass scenes in the entire world, and there's tens of thousands of fans in the region. So that's what it was about. It was about saying thank you, and it was about getting recognition. And my colleagues thought I was a bit crazy because it's really not something you talk about. But I knew that fellow metalheads would appreciate it, because I always felt as a metalhead that I had access to this beautiful culture, and nobody wanted to know the first thing about it, and they always wrote it off. And I said, no, metalheads, they would appreciate. We want to stay underground. That's cool. We want to do our thing. I don't want us to be, on Billboard top 50 all the time. But, we want that recognition would be appreciated. And that's why I think it went around the world, because metalheads were like, thank you for talking about us. And so the city of Montreal voted a motion, and I worked with Sébastien Croteau, and Louise Girard was in the loop too. Sébastien Croteau from Necrotic Mutation, Louise Girard, who is an impresaria of great importance in the Quebec metal scene, with Sauvé and other things she's done. And so we wrote the draft, and we sort of mixed it a bit, and then we submitted it, and we got a unanimous consent for this motion to declare Montreal a city of excellence in heavy metal. And the press went wild too, and the international press. And I saw my name being mentioned in Japanese and Brazilian Portuguese, and in Finnish, and all over the world. And I was getting Google hits all of a sudden. It wasn't for that, but it was amazing to see that we've been able to vibrate this idea that Montreal is a city of excellence in heavy metal across the world. So it was it was one of my funnest moments ever as a politician.
It's amazing. I was so stoked because I know it's true. I've toured the globe. I know that metal has its hotbeds, as people like to say, but Montreal has been a hotbed for so goddamn long. It's not just one era that came from here and then that's it, just a flash in the pan. Montreal's been doing it consecutively for years, for decades now. Why? I get asked this question all the time. I have my answer. I'm curious as to what your answer is. Why are there so many damn good bands coming out of Montreal? Why so many metal bands specifically?
Oh, I'd love to hear your impression too. But I think Montreal is a hub for culture, and I think there are historical and geographical reasons for that. I think geographically we're not far from New York, Boston, some of the centers of North American culture in this region, and we're not we're a bus ride away, we're a train ride away. So there's exchange with these cities, culturally speaking. I think the Prohibition era in the United States brought a lot of amazing jazz music to Montreal. And I know I'm going far away here, but I think
that's cool.
that the creation of the jazz hub in Montreal and the Black community here in Montreal and the impresarios of jazz here and all those amazing musicians that came up to play in the clubs in the 20s, they stimulated something that really started, I think, struck a spark in Montreal. So I think that's a piece. We're culturally and geographically, I think, well located. And then we're a people of joie de vivre. I think in Montreal, we like to live. It's not all about work for us. It's part of our culture. We like to go out. We like to have good food, and so appreciating things that aren't just materialistic, I think, is part of us as well. So the cultural scene is boosted by all of this. We have 4 universities, numerous junior colleges, cégeps. We have music schools left, right, and center. We have jazz festivals. We have Nuit d'Afrique festivals. We have every type of music festival you want. And every single scene has a huge quantity of musicians that are top quality and musicians that come from all across the planet to come play here. So the metalheads here have this basin of music education possibilities, a really lively scene already, And so that's why I think we grow and we grow and we grow. And so I sort of see a connection there. Maybe that's a bit abstract.
No, it's great.
I think there's something there.
It definitely fills in some gaps in my answer too. So that the Prohibition era jazz musicians, the scene that is sparked there is like an earlier precursor to my answer, which I got from interviewing the guys behind, the people behind the No Speed Limit, the history of Quebec metal, and his answer, which I thought was amazing, and that melded with Lord Worm's answer, who I had on my 2-year anniversary, and him and Mike were like, we found it, we found the perfect answer. So the jazz mixed with the No Speed Limit, which is the fact that during the 60s, 70s, all of the cégeps would have these auditoriums, and a bunch of prog bands from the UK, from the States, came and toured Quebec. They played the cégeps. So there's this whole crowd of people just getting exposed to this progressive music, out of the box music. Just about every weekend, you can go see a different prog band during that era. And at the same time, there was the biker pubs that would have more hard hitting music happening, more hard rock. So the melding of those two things mixed in, and Lord Worm was saying that it's all about the progressive music, Yes coming through, and then kids who are growing up listening to their parents' music, which is like Yes, Genesis. It's just not that much far of a step to push it a little bit faster, a little bit harder, taking all those weird time signatures, amping up the distortion, and then throwing in some harsh vocals, and there's death metal.
I think that's totally true. And we did have some really early prog rock bands, right, stemming from Quebec, and that's true. It's the beginning chapters of Defosse's work there. It's true.
Yes, thank you.
I went and looked up some of those bands too. I'm like, oh, that's pretty good stuff. From like the 69 and 70. I forget the names. Like Sex was one of them, I think. One of the bands. Great name.
It's crazy. We're lucky to be from here. And then as the 2000s rolled on, obviously I always credit Cité 2000, where Cataclysm and Cryptopsy jammed, and they were facing each other. They would like step out of their jam rooms after having listened to each other. That friendly sense of competition really drove the Quebec scene in the 90s with Gorguts, Cataclysm, Cryptopsy, Necrotic Mutation that came over. Suffocation would come up here and tour Rimouski. Like Rimouski was a tour date on a Canadian tour. That's crazy,
Yeah, they had such a great scene. It's amazing. Rimouski. It's really on the radar there.
But on the, you'd never see that nowadays, like a tiny town like that on a tour date. It's great. But back then it was standard practice because the scene was there. Circle Pits in the way. And then BCI booking at the Medley, bringing in just about every metal tour for the, mid 90s or late 90s up until the 2000s. Super impactful for what's happening right now in the Quebec metal scene. So it's like a process of everyone helping and everyone evolving, like just a layer and a layer and a layer. That's why Quebec is has such a rich metal culture, and I think it's amazing.
I absolutely concur with everything you've said. That's true, and good point. Cité 2000, an excellent piece there too. I remember walking into that place where you'd hear just blast beats left, right, and center. There's a room down the hall. There's blast beats there. This guy's working this amp. It was amazing.
I love it. Back to craft beer. If you could ever make a Craig Sauvé beer, what style of beer would it be and what would you call it? And I'm adding an extra layer to this because you're local, you're from Montreal. So what local brewery would you like to pair with to release this beer?
Well, that's tough. You're asking a politician to take sides with a local brewery.
You can leave out the brewery.
Don't do that to me, Matt. No, I mean, there's some really great local breweries in the neighborhood where I'm at. We got McCausland as well, right down the street, and I know them pretty well, and they've been amazing to the community. What kind of brewer? I've actually brewed 2 beers before. My girlfriend is a brewer, like a home brewer, and she's got all the equipment, and we did 2 batches together. And the first one we were going for a blonde stout, and it was pretty damn good. Yeah, it was tough. Yeah, we didn't get to the blonde stout. It was a delicious blonde. I forget what we named it, but it was we brewed it just in time for the U.S. election to be able to sit as Donald Trump was losing. And then we made a Christmas beer, which was called Not Today Santa. And that was an excellent beer. My girlfriend's really good at it, and so we're going to do more experimenting and brew some more beers at home probably. And I really want to try a double dry hop. I really want to see if I can pull one of those off because, like I said, I want that like 4,000, IBUs. I want to go for 10 minutes after sipping it, and I want to be like completely non-translucent at all. I want it to be like nuclear yellow. I want to see if I can do that.
That's killer. That's killer. Most of the time, those crazy orange juice opaque ones, the IBU is actually lower than you think it is. IBU is more like a West Coast dank, so you need to like scrape your tongue after.
Mm-hmm.
So you can do it though. I believe in you. And ask the Masoran boys. They'll help you out. They started out as home brewers.
They are fantastic. Really, that's a hidden gem for people that don't know the Mason Brasserie.
If you don't know about it, you haven't been listening to the podcast, people. For myself, I am in pit retirement, but I think that when the pandemic stops and we can start getting into concerts again and my friends will be coming through town, I believe that I might find myself out of pit retirement. Are you in or out of pit retirement, Craig?
I.e., do I jump in the pit once in a while?
Exactly.
I do jump in the pit once in a while.
Do you? That's sick.
I do. I think the last time was maybe Beyond Creation. They did their album launch at, was it somewhere on the plateau? I think it was. Anyway, it was a great album launch, and I was feeling it, and I jumped in there. So yeah, it depends how I'm feeling the night. Sometimes I just want to hang back. Sometimes I'm still in a suit and tie from work when I go to the metal shows. But yeah, no, I've jumped in the pit many times, and it just feels good. I'm not one of those harsh, like knock the other people down, like really try to go. I'm sort of like a circle pit kind of guy. I love the sort of running around and just sort of like letting out energy and sort of, friendly bumps, as it were.
What was the first show after you made Montreal a city of excellence in metal music? Did people come up to you? Were you more recognized because of that?
I don't think so. No, I don't. I don't think too many people. I mean, a lot of people wrote me. A lot of people wrote me after that via Facebook, Twitter, or other things, and I made new friends through that. So that's cool. But nobody came up to me really and said, "Hey, you're the Montreal metal guy," which is cool. People are, if you're at their shows and doing their own thing. I didn't do it to get recognized. I did it for like all of us to give us a little bit of a pump up, and to get us a little more recognized.
Was there a message from a Facebook or a Twitter that blew you away, that you didn't believe that this big star was hitting you up?
No, but there is a local sort of metal blogger. His name is Jimmy K. Goes by Jimmy K, and he does the metal voice. I don't know if you know the metal voice. Yep. And he contacted some people when he heard this thing was coming out, because in City Hall, when a motion's about to come out, you have to put it on the agenda, and it's on the agenda a few days before it's actually voted on. And so that becomes public. So he saw it there because it was reported. And then he asked some people in the metal scene, and Dave Ellefson commented within 12 hours or something, and saying, "This is awesome. Montreal is definitely a metal city. I confirm, as someone who's played there, dozens of times." And that was really fun. That was really fun that it was touching, international metal artists, and they were saying, "Yep, I agree. Montreal is definitely a metal city."
That's so sick. And Dave rules. Absolutely rules. I'm back into talking to a politician. In the world, I don't want to get too polarized, but in the world, people are not happy all the time. And VOX&HOPS is really not political at all. So my question is more like this. If people are unhappy with what's happening in the world or in their city, what is the best way for them to try to make change?
That's a good question. I think that, if you're really someone who wants to make change, get involved with, and there's a number of ways to make change in this world. It can be directly through politics. So you can say, I like this politician, this political party, I'm going to go help them. But there's also other organizations in civil society that really move things forward. There's the media. You can become a blogger. You can start blogging and writing about, or doing podcasts or vlogs. Or you can, join a local community group. Maybe someone who's, working on an issue you care about, if it's poverty, if it's the environment, if it's, whatever it may be. There are even sometimes religious organizations that do fun things for change. There are unions that work for change. There is I think there are a lot of places where we can go. So I think it's most important that people go where they feel the most passionate, and they find the group with which they feel most comfortable working, and try to find the group that are doing honest work, that are working in good faith, and that are trying to really make the change. And groups that you don't have necessarily people with that are trying to do it for themselves or for getting headlines or anything. So I think it's a good experience to find those healthy groups. And it's hard; you might not be able to suss one out right away, but usually there's groups in every neighborhood of all sorts that you can get involved with. But like I said, if you're more of someone that just wants to work by themselves, maybe online presence, maybe blogging, maybe doing some research and sharing research, could be really helpful. And I know that there have been podcasters, bloggers, social media people that have really influenced the rest of the world. And we have that opportunity now. We have a whole new opportunity for voice. So I say just go out there and give her.
I love that. The internet has given a lot of people voice. We don't have to listen to them all, though.
No. There's some people. There's people that do like all sorts of bad stuff on the internet too. Absolutely, but so I mean, that is a whole other societal epistemological discussion we have to have, I think. But there are great, maybe a more established group to start off with someone a little bit better of a track record if you want to. But usually in groups, people will take you in. People will be happy to, and you make friends. When you get involved, you make friends. You meet new people.
Well, like-minded individuals are always fun to be around.
Absolutely, that's true.
Craig, thank you so much for taking the time hanging out with me. We're going to wrap this up. One last question. I love to finish with this question. It probably doesn't happen to you very often because you're very, very busy being a city councilor, being on the board of the STM, being involved, being on Project Montreal. But every once in a while, it happens to everyone. What is your hangover cure?
What's really good? Exercise. Exercise is really good. It's hard. It is hard. If you've had a rough night, go for a walk, get the blood flowing, get some fresh air. I really recommend that. And if you can do a little jog or do a little bike ride, just get that system going again, because you're in withdrawal if you're in hangover and your body just needs a reboot. So drink some water, go do some exercise.
I love it. Craig, thank you so much. Hanging out with me, talking about your life, music, and about craft beer. I really appreciate what you've done for the city of Montreal, making us an official metal city. I'm sorry it's taken this long for us to hang out, but I'm happy that we did. Cheers to you, and I'm very, very stoked to hang out and drink a beer with you in person soon.
Likewise, Matt. Thank you so much for having me. This blog really rocks. I listen to it all the time. This podcast. Cheers.
Cheers.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right to the end. You know that I love and appreciate that. I loved this conversation. As I mentioned throughout it, it is one that has been in the works for quite some time. The pandemic really just sort of put a halt to that, sadly, but I'm very, very happy that I had a chance to connect with Craig, a very important human in the history of Montreal metal. It will not be forgotten that Montreal is now a city of excellence in heavy metal. I love that, and I know that you do too. If you enjoyed this Vox and Hops episode, you should sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast mailing list. You can do that on my website, VOX&HOPS.com, and that's VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive one email a week containing all of the details of everything that has happened throughout the past week in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, including all the details for any episodes which I've dropped throughout that past week, if I've been a guest on someone else's podcast, all the information of any cool projects I have in the works, such as Brutal North America, as well as the updated links to Thirsty Thursday hangs and the links to the Brutal Awakenings playlist, which is available on both Apple Music and Spotify and is curated by my man Jerry Monk, the metal architect himself. So please do me a favor, sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast mailing list, because there's just so much going on in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. I would hate for you to miss a single thing. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media. I hope that you have a glorious weekend. I will be back next week with 2 episodes, but until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.